Justin Trudeau in town today, of course, for that big Northvolt announcement. Most of the questions he took, though, had nothing to do with that, had everything to do with
No
Ukraine,
yeah.
including this one. So he's asked here what reaction has been from Ukraine since this happened. He's been in touch. Here's what he said.
Since this terrible incident happened on Friday, we have been in close connection with our Ukrainian friends and counterparts. We've expressed, obviously, the extraordinary regret that all of Canada shares that this would have happened, and reassured them that we continue to stand incredibly strong with Ukraine in its fight against Russia. We've invested close to $9.5 billion now in military, humanitarian, financial aid for Ukraine, and we have reassured them that we will continue to be there unequivocally with everything it takes for as long as it takes.
Okay, that's a lot of explaining to do for what's going on, but okay, what do you think? Are we done with this, Tom, or not?
Well, it's interesting because it's one of those things where you can't just turn the page and say everything's changed. And the Conservatives did everything they could to muddy the waters, to try to make Trudeau bear some of this blame. He's blameless in this. This is 100% Anthony Rota. Even if they have 5 parliamentary committees, all they're going to find out is, Anthony Rota wrote this stuff and wanted to introduce somebody from his writing, not much of an expert on the history of World War II, eh? So what the Conservatives are hoping is to hurt Trudeau. And that's why Trudeau was smart. When he gave the apology yesterday, he was apologizing for and on behalf of the Parliament of Canada because everybody stood up, including all of the Conservatives. But it's not going to stop Poilievre. You know, he smells blood and he thinks he's going to be able to hurt Trudeau with this. It's Canada that's been hurt by this. It's our international reputation. It's who we are in the world. You know, we're sort of the good guys. People look at us and they like what they see. And, you know, talking with people that, you know, that are close to me in the media in Europe, it's like, what did you guys do? You brought a former Nazi into what happened?
God.
So even if you try to talk about Anthony Rota, they've never heard of Anthony Rota. They've heard of Justin Trudeau because he's been on the international stage for 8 years now. So that's what they want to know. You know, what are you guys doing? So I think that Trudeau did well in the House yesterday. That far too long response, I think, just shows a certain amount of very simple human fatigue. He's pooped. You know, this has been 5 days of them losing their stuff. I talked to one cabinet minister a couple of days ago, and that person was simply beside themselves. It's just like they still can't believe that after putting everything in place, having this perfect, like picture-perfect visit, Churchillian quality speech from Zelensky and everything you could hope for, and then this boneheaded thing, not in anybody's plan, not on anybody's radar, but all of Canada is going to wear it for a while, and Trudeau's going to keep getting questions about it. And, you know, I'm convinced of that, Aaron and Natasha.
Well, it's certainly not going away until we've got a new House Speaker, right?
Right.
And so 4 MPs want the gig, I think a deputy and 2 assistant deputies?
Yes, and the one that I would put my toonie on is a wonderful woman named Carol Hughes, very unassuming, unpretentious. Her writing, I'm going to try to get it right, Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing. I've been up there a number of times, Northern Ontario, and she's a Franco-Ontarian, fluently bilingual, deep experience, you know, with boards and with organizations, and she's been there for 8 years. The whole time that Rhoda was there, she's been there. So, you know, they've worked together. She knows his technique and his method. His method was being a listener, being tough but equal and fair to all sides. So I think she's got the inside track because it would have been, of course, Trudeau's interest to, 1, send the elevator back up to his NDP partner, and 2, try to get the votes because it's a minority parliament, and if the Conservatives and the Bloc decide to play silly with this thing, well, it could go on. There could be vote after vote after vote until you finally whittle it down to 1.
All right, let's move on to something out of Saskatchewan. I know we talked about this when the story first came up, and Scott Moe taking that stand. This is a couple of provinces now in Canada doing this as far as pronouns, and parents ought to know. Well, today, Tom, I hate to say it, but maybe you saw this coming. You may have mentioned this. Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan, vows to use, guess what? The notwithstanding clause.
I'm shaking my head.
After a court injunction halted this pronoun policy where parents would, of course, be the first to have to make a decision here or at least know what was going on. So your thoughts on this?
Well, the last time a premier in English Canada decided to, reach for the atomic weapon of the notwithstanding clause, it was Doug Ford, and he got so roundly beaten up, he backed off. And it had something to do with a totally banal event. It was who would get to decide how many ridings, so to speak, how many districts there would be on city council in Toronto. He was trying to pare the thing back and, do a bit of gerrymandering. He backed off. on using the notwithstanding clause because he realized that it was just such a hot button issue for people in Ontario who were really concerned about what that could mean for their rights more generally. In Saskatchewan, Scott Moe is like the strongman of Canadian politics. I would put him and Legault on equal footing. I mean, even though Legault's numbers are dipping a little bit this week, don't let anybody kid you. He'd still win a healthy majority in a heartbeat. So Scott Moe is that type of person. He's been flexing his right-wing muscles more and more. This bit about pronouns and parents' rights and stuff like that is just, of course, the thin edge of the wedge to go against, trans people and LGBTQ rights. If you look at the facts around them, this is like not something that is mainstream, but you wind up getting people in the streets because in the area of social media, you get people really upset. So it began with the Premier of New Brunswick, Blaine Higgs, and he had members of his cabinet, much to their credit, who resigned simply because they weren't going to go along. They knew he was playing a political game. There's polling on this, Aaron and Natasha, that shows that a majority of people are uneasy with the subject, and especially the terminology gets opaque. And what does it actually mean? And does this mean, the kids are going to be badly treated and so forth? So it's easy to get people very emotional about this, and Scott Moe is just playing to that. By the way, in Ontario, Doug Ford hasn't touched it. He sent in Stephen Lecce, his education minister, to deal with this on pretty much the same grounds. But Ford's just that much cagier. He's not going to be the one carrying the ball. So what has Moe said? Well, he just got a court decision today, and he says he's got the support of the Saskatchewan people. The courts were saying, we're going to suspend the application of your rules on pronouns and so forth, Premier Moe, until we can get a final ruling. And he's already huffing and puffing, saying he's going to bring back the legislature 2 weeks early and force through his bill, his ideas, using the notwithstanding clause. So stay tuned. I don't think you're going to get the same strong reaction in Saskatchewan that you had in Ontario. I think he might be able to pull it off. Alan Blakeney, the former NDP premier, the late Alan Blakeney, former NDP premier of Saskatchewan, had written something very pertinent about the ongoing conversation between the legislature and the courts and who gets to decide. And it's not an easy discussion to have. We go through it in Quebec, and we realize that using the notwithstanding clause as a preemptive measure doesn't make any sense because you don't even test the legislation. Well, Scott Moe's going to try to copy that. And that might actually help the contestation of Bill 21 and Bill 96, frankly, because if it becomes such a commonplace, the minute you don't like something, you use the notwithstanding clause. I think that's almost an invitation to the Supreme Court to start tightening it down a little bit.
I just want to ask one thing because we have to wrap up. When they tried doing this in Ontario, it seemed to me Justin Trudeau didn't waste any time sticking his nose into that debate. Do you think he'll do the same in Saskatchewan?
I'm going to watch and see. I think he's had such a rough week, it might take him a little bit more time. But I do think he's going to have to say something about it. This is a kryptonite politically right now because the right-wing parties, like the Conservatives when they were in Quebec City a couple of weeks ago, they've got the polling on this. They've got the focus groups on this. They know what this means across Canada. And they talked about bringing 1 million people into the street. They didn't get anywhere near that. But they had a lot of really upset people because the information that's being pushed out there is largely exaggerated, if not flat out wrong. But it doesn't mean people aren't upset. And so this is what Poilievre and other right-wing parties see as a real gold mine for them to go and get votes.
Yeah, people voting for Justin Trudeau, though, I don't think are the same people. I think that he's already lost those voters, if you will.
Yeah, but then again, when he was in Trois-Rivières a year ago, he said, I think I might take on, this whole idea of the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause. And then it was all crickets. Somebody showed him some polling at how popular it was in Quebec, and he just disappeared. He never talked about that again.
We'll see if that happens here.
Thanks,
Tom, thank you. Appreciate it.